everyone. Welcome to today's Facebook Live. My name is Wendy Myers of MyersDetox.com. Thanks so much for joining me. We host these Facebook Lives every Tuesday at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern. And then we also post them on my YouTube channel at youtube.com/Wendy Myers. Please go there and subscribe. And these will also be reposted. If you miss any part of this broadcast, it will be reposted on Facebook.com/Myers Detox. So today we're going to be talking about lead toxicity, a big concern for a lot of people. And I read a really, really interesting study in the Lancet that talked about how lead toxicity kills more people than cancer each year. Lead is no joke, and it is unfortunately just ubiquitous in our environment for many reasons. So we're going to review the Lancet study that estimates that 412,000 Americans die from heart disease induced from lead toxicity every year. And like I said, that's more people than die from cancer every year. We're going to talk about sources of lead toxicity, where you're getting the stuff, symptoms of lead toxicity. I'm going to show you a US map of lead in tap water. I'll give you a link to that so you can check if your area potentially has lead concerns. We're also going to talk about, do basic water filters remove lead, like the PUR and Brita water filters that most people have in their homes. We'll review the EPA study on that, if these filters do in fact remove lead. We'll talk about if you're exposed to lead in your shower water, the water that you bathe in. A lot of people are drinking filtered water and drinking bottled water, but not really thinking about the water they're showering in. So we'll talk about that. And I'll also talk about my top 3 tips to detox lead and different supplements, food, infrared saunas, things like that. The top supplements, top foods to remove lead. So let's jump into this. So remember, if you have any questions, I am here to answer your questions. I am here to support you on your detox journey. I'm here to educate you about toxins and what to do about them. Let's see. I'm going to just go into first how lead exposure is killing more people than cancers. And so this, it's a bombshell study that was published in the Lancet, which is a medical journal, and it finds that low-level lead exposure is responsible for the death of 412,000 Americans each year, primarily from lead-induced heart disease. So the study is entitled Low-Level Lead Exposure and Mortality in U.S. Adults, a population-based cohort study. And so that's in the Lancet. I'll post a link to it here so you guys can, check it out for yourselves. So I'll put that link in here if you want it. And so there's an alarming number of deaths from lead exposure as calculated by this study that exceeds many estimates for the numbers of Americans killed each year by cancer. So lead exposure is killing more Americans than cancer each year, but there's just not enough awareness about this. So what this study looked at closely is at the fact that lead is one of many recognized risk factors for cardiovascular disease, which is the #1 killer in the US. And so let's look at how lead promotes heart disease. In looking at dozens of studies, which the Lancet study did, it looked at chronic exposure to lead and how that causes high blood pressure, which contributes to heart disease, and enhance the development of hardening of the arteries or arteriosclerosis by inactivating nitric oxide. Lead also increases the formation of hydrogen peroxide. It inhibits arterial lining repair. It impairs angiogenesis or formation of new blood vessels and promotes thrombosis, which is also, blockage of your arteries as well. And higher concentrations of lead in blood in this study was associated with hypertension, with electrocardiographic abnormalities, peripheral arterial disease, left ventricular hypertrophy, and cardiovascular disease mortality. The 23-year study concluded that low-level environmental lead exposure is an important but largely overlooked risk factor for cardiovascular disease mortality in the US. And a comprehensive strategy to prevent deaths from cardiovascular disease should include efforts to reduce lead exposure. And so my father had heart disease. My father, was on statins, and then he was put on diabetic medication, and then he got cancer. And so I really firmly believe that lead was a big causative factor in his demise. Definitely cadmium because he smoked. And but all of us are exposed to so many different sources of lead in our environment. We'll get to those in a minute. But let's talk about some of the symptoms of lead toxicity. So there are lots of symptoms. I mean, the page, literally is this long. Of all the different symptoms that lead can cause, because what this metal does, and other heavy metals, is they poison enzymes, and that inhibits functioning in various ways. So lead just poisons enzymes that are utilized in so many different systems in the body. So it causes fatigue and mitochondrial damage. And it also causes abdominal pain. I've had a couple of clients that had unexplained abdominal pain. They couldn't figure out what it was. And one of them had lead toxicity. One of them had arsenic toxicity. But abdominal pain definitely can have lead as an underlying root cause. Definitely interferes in adrenal hormones, promotes adrenal insufficiency. It can cause aggression and irritability, anger. Promotes allergies. It's involved in dementia of all types, including Alzheimer's and Parkinson's disease. It's involved in anxiety and inhibits neurotransmitter function in many ways. Also promotes depression in that way. It causes arthritis and joint pain, arteriosclerosis, which is hardening of the arteries, attention deficit disorder, ADHD, ADD, cancer, absolutely. And this is all backed by research. Every single one of the things that I'm mentioning all has a research, many research studies behind it. Cataracts is a big one. A lot of people don't realize that cataracts are caused by lead, and coordination loss also. It can cause deafness. Lead can cause diabetes. It interferes in the beta islet cells producing insulin. Lead can also cause gout. It can cause headaches, high blood pressure, hypertension, hypothyroidism, impotency in males. It also reduces sperm productions and the health of sperm motility. So it causes reproductive issues, infertility, reduced fertility. It causes immune suppression, kidney dysfunction because it builds up in the kidneys, lowered IQ in children especially, memory loss, recurrent miscarriages, multiple sclerosis and spinal cord pathology, peripheral neuropathies, tingling, numbness in the hands and feet, vertigo, and violence and aggression, which I kind of touched on that earlier. So a lot of different symptoms. And as you can imagine, when you're hearing this symptom list or maybe identifying with this symptom list, so many people are pouring into their doctor's offices with one or more of the above symptoms and being prescribed the medication for it. Medication for sleep, getting IVF treatments for infertility, getting medications for depression, or whatever that case may be, when it could be lead. It could be lead or other heavy metals contributing to or outright causing these symptoms. So that's why I'm doing what I'm doing, trying to educate you guys about how many different metals impact every different organ system and system in our body and disrupts its function. This is a huge cause of your symptoms. So where are we getting this lead? So tap water is a huge source. And so I want to take a look at this US map of lead in tap water. So if you want to take a look at this map, it's pretty cool. It will show you in this article where we know that lead is in tap water. So you can be aware that's you. And so since we know it's in water, obviously you want to be drinking filtered water. You do not want to be drinking tap water ever, just straight water, straight out of the tap. You don't want to be using it for cooking. I don't even use it to brush my teeth. There's way too many contaminants, lead only being one of hundreds of contaminants. But so the question I want to answer is, do basic water filters remove lead, like the PUR filter, the Brita filter? And I'm going to review an EPA study where they studied just this in Flint, Michigan, and another place, I believe is Washington State, where there was a lead issue as well, or I'm sorry, Washington, D.C. And so what this study did by the EPA, they took these faucet-mounted water cartridges and filters by PUR, P-U-R, that are certified to remove up to 150 parts per billion of lead. And then they took Brita faucet-mounted water cartridges and filters that are also certified to remove up to 150 parts per billion of lead, and did a study on them. And this was done in 2016. And what they found, they compared 345 samples and provided before and after filtration results. And they found that all the filters, whether they were new or used, removed lead down to 0.2 parts per billion. So totally acceptable. And the investigators determined that the study demonstrated that the removal of lead from concentrations much greater than 150 parts per billion to well below the current 10 parts per billion certification acceptance criteria. So therefore, properly certified, installed, and maintained filters can be expected to reliably reduce lead exposure from drinking water, even when high lead levels in excess of 1,000 parts per billion are present in unfiltered tap water. So they do work to remove lead. So that's great, right? Well, at least for lead, but these common water filters like the PUR and the Brita do not remove all of the heavy metals or other toxic metals, hundreds of chemicals, hundreds of medications, hundreds of bacteria and parasites, radiation, and other water contaminants. So they do help some. I mean, it's definitely better than drinking straight tap water. But for removal of every potential water contaminant, I recommend a Pure Effects water filter. And you can find these in my store at store.myersdetox.com and type in water filters. And there's a number of things that come up. And but say you're drinking perfectly filtered water, like all the water you drink is filtered, or you drink spring water from clean sources. But what about the absorption of toxins through your skin when you're showering? Are you exposed to lead when you bathe? And the answer is yes, because lead can be present in the water supply, whether it's your tap water, well water, or other water sources. So you can be exposed to lead in the water when you bathe and shower. But if you have concerns about this, the first thing to do is test for lead in your water and other metals in your water. And if you do have metals, if you do find that you have metals or other chemicals in your water, you can get the appropriate water filter to remove the lead or other metals found in the test. And you can test for lead with this, this water metals analysis test that I recommend to my clients. And it's a lot more comprehensive for metals than other tests that I found. I have a lot of clients saying, oh, I had my well water tested. I had my tap water tested. But it would test for metals. So there's more than 4 heavy metals that are problematic. But some of these, tests, they only test for the most common concerning metals, which are arsenic, mercury, lead, and cadmium typically. But what about all the others? There's uranium, there's manganese, and there's lots of other metals that we need to be concerned about. So I'll give you this link for this water metals test if you like. And I'll put that link here in the comments for you guys. So I think that's really, really handy. It's also great to see what metals your water filter is getting or not getting. So you can do that test for yourself. And I have a new shower filter that I'm going to be recommending soon. It's not out on the market yet, but you'll know about it as soon as it is. I'm going to have the inventor of this on the podcast. And it's the only shower filter I know of that removes all heavy metals and chemicals, everything, where most shower filter heads on the market only remove fluoride and chlorine and not enough of everything else. So this is a amazing invention. And this inventor also made it so that you can put little pods like Keurig coffee pods. You can put a little pod in it that will give you like a mineral shower, or put a pod in it that will give you a hydrogen-based shower. There's other things that you can add to it, but I think it's just really incredible. I mean, it's really not expensive at all. The guy's super, super busy, obviously, because this is just an amazing invention that it's much, much needed. Because I've done some research on shower filters and just have not been impressed. So many that I have found only get chlorine and fluoride and not really a whole lot else. They weren't something that I felt like I could recommend. And so this is the first shower head filter I'll be recommending, but more on that later. If you guys follow me on myersdetox.com, you'll get my newsletter. I'll do a podcast. You'll get all that info when that comes out pretty soon. So let's talk about where else we get lead. So we established it's in water. But other sources of lead include lead-based paint. This is actually the number one, or one of the number one exposures to lead, because 50% of homes still have lead paint on the walls. It might be underneath new coats of paint from 50 years ago, but the lead paint is still there. And if you have any cracking or peeling or dust coming off of these walls, which happens unless you have a perfectly maintained home, you are being exposed to lead. And then soil is actually in the lead that's in the soil. It gets into our food supply and into our food-based supplements and other products that we use. This is the number one source of lead exposure. And why is that? Why is it in the soils? Well, because lead was added to leaded gasoline. And so all of these emissions from auto exhaust, industrial emissions, all this stuff settled into the soils and still persists to this day. And even though in the United States we use unleaded gasoline now, notice it's called unleaded. They removed the lead. Leaded gasoline is still used in developing countries. So that gets into our atmosphere. It is carried by weather patterns to us. So lead is still being released in alarming amounts in industrial use and in car smog and car exhaust and things like that. And there are also a lot of lead-based pesticides. And so there's any of these lead-based pesticides that were used still going to be in the soil. And so the lead is also found in ceramic glazes. So there's tons of lead being found in Corningware and other types of dishes that were used in most households for decades, still being used, being passed down from mother to daughter, family to family. And it's amazing. I belong to this one Facebook group called, Lead Group, or It's All About Lead. And there's this lady, she's constantly testing all these different Corningware patterns and finding they have shockingly high lead levels in this Corningware. So if you're using some of that, still might want to think about upgrading from some of this, dishes and things that you've had. Especially be cautious if you have gotten pottery from Mexico or China, or dishes and things like that. My mom used to buy tons and tons of pottery and would be using it when she had guests over and whatnot. But some of these glazes they're lead-based pottery glazes. So just be highly aware of that. Don't eat from pottery that you've bought in other countries. And cigarette smoke is a huge cause of lead exposure. Every puff people take, they're breathing in lead, arsenic, cadmium. There's 4,000 different toxins in cigarette smoke that it's estimated. And almost all of the heavy metals are in cigarettes and tobacco as well. So just be aware of that. Lead is also in colored inks used for tattoos. So a lot of the dark inks have lead in them. So it's going right into your skin, it's right into your bloodstream, getting a tattoo. It's also in cosmetics, namely mascara, lipsticks. Pretty much if your lipstick is not certified free of lead, probably has lead in it. And so lead is just used in some of the colors. A lot of the red lipsticks can have lead in them, and some of the darker lipsticks. So just be aware of that. And let's see, so herbs can have high lead because the lead's in the soil, and a lot of herbs and teas have an affinity for really pulling up a ton of nutrients into them, but also heavy metals as well. So herbs and teas, super, super nutritious and nutrient dense because they have this affinity for pulling nutrients out of the soil, but that also comes with heavy metals. So just be cautious for any herbs from India or China, especially because they're just very, very polluted environments. Then there's hair dyes, especially black hair dyes. Like Grecian formula, we know has lead contamination in it. Then there's lead pipes. You live in a really old building. Just be aware you can still have lead pipes. And pesticide residues can have lead that can be found in foods. And supplements containing herbs from India and China. Traditional Chinese medicines and herbs, powders that you get when you go get acupuncture. I tend to stay away from those because I know they can have lead, nickel, arsenic, cadmium, mercury, and other metals. Also cans with lead solder sealing, such as juices and vegetables, can contain lead. And then of course, occupational exposure. If you're working in metal, working with metal, making jewelry, battery production, a lot of different types of manufacturing come with that lead exposure as well. So let's talk about my top 3 tips to detox lead. So we know that everyone has lead. Everyone has lead in their bodies. It is 100% statistically impossible to not have lead in your body. And it's primarily in your bones. So the body is not going to allow this lead that we ingest to just float around the bloodstream. It sequesters it away primarily in bone tissue. And interestingly enough, it actually can make bones like denser on DEXA scan. When women are going to their doctor and getting a bone density scan, it can actually make that scan look more dense than it actually is. And this lead displaces calcium in the bones. So if you don't have enough calcium in your diet, your body will fill up your bones with lead. So the bones are used as kind of trash receptacles almost for different metals, including aluminum. So let's review some of the supplements, food, and other detox protocols that will facilitate lead removal. So the following supplements work as really potent detoxifiers of lead. So the number one way to get rid of lead is with EDTA. EDTA is a synthetic compound that is very, very adept at removing lead, but it's kind of like dropping a nuclear bomb on an anthill. It definitely works, but it's not my first strategy. It's not my first approach to removing lead unless someone is extremely toxic in lead. We do have those people that have lead toxicity, very severe lead toxicity people that are basically aren't able to work because they have such bad chronic fatigue from lead toxicity. And for those folks, I would recommend doing IV EDTA or DMSA IV therapy chelation, because there is a time and a place for that to bring lead levels down. But for the majority of us, we want to do things that are natural, safer, and get lead at a deeper level. IV chelation won't get lead on a deep, deep level, lead that's embedded deeply in our tissues, like our bones. It'll get rid of the surface, lead that's in our soft tissues and other areas of our body. The chelation will pull it out. But it can take up to 10 years to remove all the lead that you have in your body. You're not going to remove all of the lead in your body from a few sessions of IV chelation. You have to do something on a consistent basis, using supplements, using food, using infrared saunas, using binders to slowly but surely start pulling this stuff out, displacing these metals, including lead, out of your body. So one of the best things for removing lead is vitamin C. That's a great supplement to remove lead. Cilantro or coriander seed oil. So cilantro tinctures, like Herb Farm cilantro, or I love Perfect Pressed coriander seed oil, very effective at lead removal. Calcium and magnesium help to displace lead from bones. So when you start, if you need calcium, not everyone needs calcium. I'm not saying everyone should run out and start supplementing with calcium to displace lead, but some people do need calcium. But for the most part, I don't recommend it. I prefer people get it from their diet as opposed to supplementing with it. And if you do take it, you have to take the cofactors like magnesium, vitamin K, and vitamin D only from foods. I only recommend people get fat-soluble vitamins like vitamin D from food sources. So the foods to eat to remove lead from your body, you can get calcium in leafy greens like spinach, Swiss chard, kale, things of that nature. You can also get it in dairy products. I love raw milk, kefir, cheeses. I only do raw dairy when I do eat dairy, and butter. I eat raw butter. But the dairy products, leafy greens, great sources of calcium and magnesium. And then vitamin C, I get vitamin C from amla berry powder. It's also called amalaki powder. And so that's one of the highest sources of vitamin C in the food world. And moringa powder, I make a smoothie almost every morning or every other morning, and I use the amla berry powder and moringa powder, very, very potent cancer fighters, super high in vitamin C. Broccoli sprouts, also absolutely amazing. They have tons of sulforaphane in them, tons and tons of nutrient-dense detox power in broccoli sprouts, the #1 detox food on the planet. So those are my recommendations for food. Also, as far as supplements are concerned, I forgot to mention this, but binders, really, really important to remove lead from the body. And the most effective binder is ones that use citrus pectins. And the reason for that is citrus pectins are full of boron. And boron has an amazing binding affinity for lead and other heavy metals. And that's another reason why greens powders like moringa and other types of greens juice powders that have barley grass and other things in them are very, very high in boron. And they help to remove lead from your body in that way. And so my favorite binder is one called CitraCleanse. It's, I've talked to you guys about this at length, but my CitraCleanse, very, very rich in citrus pectin and particularly grapefruit citrus pectin, super, super high in boron to just bind onto the lead in your body. And then you just urinate it out of your system. And so this is kind of like a metal sweep. It just goes into your body and starts cleaning up all the lead in your gut you can be ingesting from your diet, cleaning up the lead in your bloodstream. And because of all the boron in it, it gets all of the other heavy metals as well. It's just amazing what it shows in the research that citrus pectin removes. But this also has cilantro in it, which is a very effective, a potent, a chelator of lead. Cilantro extract, very, very key to remove lead as well. And this has fulvic acid, which is also shown to remove lead as well. So I forgot to mention the fulvic. So all three ingredients in CitraCleanse remove lead. And so it's one of the reasons I take this every morning, and I developed it specifically to be one of the most comprehensive metal detoxifiers and chemical detoxifiers out there. So effective. So I'm going to send you a link to learn more about CitraCleanse and check it out. We have a really good special going on right now. Like if you buy 2 bottles, you get 1 free. If you buy 3 bottles, you get 2 free. So that's a pretty good deal that we have right now. We're going to have it, the rest of this week. So take advantage of that while you can, because we probably won't have that again until Black Friday or something. So let's get to your questions. So I'm sure lots of activity here for you guys. So thanks for tuning in. And so Deborah Newton, thank you for all you do to help us get healthy and live a better life. It's my pleasure. I love what I do. I love researching this stuff. I was just all day yesterday, I spent about 5 hours working on an article talking about how hormones how heavy metals impact your hormones and impact fertility, and just delving into the research on that. We're going to have a lot more articles and podcasts and content about that soon, because people don't realize how much metals, including lead, dramatically impact your hormones. They impact your mood. They impact your sleep. They impact your ability to conceive and reproduce and have children. And so I'm going to have a lot of information coming up about how heavy metals impact reproduction and our hormones as well. And so, Deborah, so what about lead in lipstick? So I mentioned that earlier, that if your lipstick is not certified to be free of lead, probably has it in it. Pretty safe bet. There have been, you can search on the internet for lead in lipstick, lots and lots of information on that. And I believe the Environmental Working Group has just tested all the lipsticks out there. You can go on their Skin Deep database. And if you're worried about one of your lipsticks, you can just look it up and find out for yourself if it has lead in it or not. And so next question, Bettina. So does the hair mineral analysis always show fairly accurate results? So also, does my understanding that you have to use hair from your head? If so, can you explain? Curious since I color my hair. So a hair mineral analysis is incredibly accurate. And it's used in so many different fields in scientific research. It's because of its accuracy, but it has to be read correctly. And it's a screening tool. There is no perfect heavy metals test. There's no one single test you're going to do that's going to tell you every single metal that you have in your body. It just doesn't exist. I don't know why I have these in. I don't need to hear anyone. So there, like I said, there's no perfect test for heavy metals, but as far as lead is concerned, we don't typically see lead on a hair mineral analysis. So I have seen it on a few very, very sick individuals who are extremely lead toxic. But for most people, we only see it in urine and or stool. That's the best way to see lead. But I don't care if lead is not on your hair mineral analysis, because I know everyone has lead. Everyone. It's impossible to not have been exposed to lead for decades and on a daily basis. So everyone has lead. So I just proceed accordingly, even if I don't have confirmed lead on a hair test. I know that it's there. And so for a hair mineral analysis, you do want to use hair from your head, because it's the most biologically active. So we want that fast growing hair coming out of your head. You can use, for men, they can use beard hair or chest hair, but I don't want people using pubic hair or underarm hair, because they just give very, very different results. But those types of hair are accurate for heavy metals. They're just not as accurate for minerals, which is something that we're looking at in the hair mineral analysis. So it doesn't matter if you color your hair. I color my hair. I've done thousands of tests. Most of my clients are female. Most of them are coloring their hair. I just don't find that it affects the results at all. The one exception being bleach. If you're bleaching your entire hair platinum, not the best for minerals. At least it can bleach out minerals, but I don't think it's going to affect metals at all. But if you do highlights in your hair, it doesn't matter. That's usually done on the top surface of the hair. You can still get a sample of hair from the back of your head, or if you feel like you don't want to have this, kind of just a small little area of, stubble, which freaks out my hairstylist. And I'm like, it's just a hair mineral analysis. But every time I go, he's like, what is this? But I'm just cutting my hair on, without you, sorry. But if that frightens you, you can get hair, take little samples from the back of your head in many different areas, so you don't have any kind of bald spot. But I find most people aren't bothered by it at all. And I find hair color doesn't matter either way. I just don't find that that's a problem. So IV, can lead in the nerves be pulled out by taking supplements besides IV therapy? So yeah, so lead is neurophilic. It loves nerve tissue, brain tissue, and that's one of the reasons it causes dementia and peripheral neuropathy and other kinds of nervous system issues. So yes, lead can be pulled out from the nerves, but it just depends on your body. So you can be taking supplements to remove lead, but your body is only going to let stuff release as it's ready. So you may be taking supplements for lead, but your body may have another metal that's a priority that needs to release, that supplement also releases. So yes, you can get rid of lead from your nervous system, soft tissues and things like that. Besides, you don't have to do IV therapy to do that, but lead it's not easy to remove, and it takes consistent dedication to a detoxification program, taking targeted supplements, and not only supplements, but doing, clearing out your detox pathways, making sure you're evacuating your bowels, making sure that you are possibly doing coffee enemas, infrared saunas. I mean, detoxification is more than just taking supplements. You need to really be doing a comprehensive system to have the best results, the best results with detoxification. So next question here. So which test do you suggest? So Iona, thank you for joining us. So the tests for lead that I suggest are, if you want to, make sure you're finding out if you have lead toxicity or not, is a urine or stool heavy metals test. So that's the best way to find out if you're lead toxic. But even if you get a test back that says you don't have lead, you can still have lead, because everyone has lead. I almost say don't bother even testing for it, because it's statistically impossible to not have lead. It's impossible. So I just, when I'm working with clients, just, proceed accordingly, like assuming the person does have lead, because many tests that people do, especially if it's a first metals test, they're typically not taking detox supplements, don't have the best nutrition, aren't taking minerals, aren't doing infrared saunas, aren't doing all these things that facilitate the coaxing of these metals out of their tissues. So they're typically not going to have a ton of metals coming out on their first tests. It's only when they start taking minerals, nutrients, chelating agents, binders, liver support with coffee enemas, infrared saunas, doing all these different things to pull these metals out of your tissues, that's when you're going to be seeing metals on tests. So don't be fooled if you get a test result back as your first test. There's not a lot of metals. That doesn't mean you're scot-free. There's other things at play. It's not always that simple. So next question here. So Ivy, will taking your CitraCleanse binds all these metals? Yes. So CitraCleanse is shown in the research to bind to lead, mercury, nickel, cadmium, arsenic, barium, bismuth. I mean, there's just tungsten. I mean, I can just go down the whole list of most of the heavy metals. It's because it's really, really high in boron. And the boron has an affinity for binding onto these metals, and then they're urinated out through your kidneys. And so, yes, CitraCleanse is one of the top supplements I recommend for removing lead. And also, if you're doing any kind of detox program to remove heavy metals, you need to be taking a binder like CitraCleanse. You can take other binders. There's other binders out there. But I like CitraCleanse because I think it's extremely effective, and it doesn't remove minerals like a lot of binders do indiscriminately. We don't want to be losing our minerals. We want to lose the metals. So Courtney, so is it able to be used with current shower head? Not willing to give up shower head, but would like the filter. No, so this new shower head filter, it's going to replace the shower head, unfortunately. That's kind of my beef too. I've actually bought shower filters and then not installed them because I didn't want to. I really liked my shower head, or the water pressure or what have you, and I didn't like the water pressure with a typical shower head. But this is the one that's coming out, that the shower head that removes all the metals and chemicals and all the heavy metals, everything. It's a really nice shower head. I don't see anyone having a problem with it. I really like it, but more on that later in the podcast and in my newsletter. So just make sure you follow my newsletter. So Iona, so once lead is deposited in the bones, is there a chelation method that is efficient or not? So I answered that question already. So Holly, so lead absorbed through the skin. Handling a lot of old porcelain and dishes. I got a Burton's line on my gums after handling a relative's estate in antiques. Yeah, and see, that's the thing, people that are like working in certain industries, or you're handling a lot of old porcelain and dishes, and there's even, this lead absorbs through our skin. So anyone that's touching lead-based glazed pottery, or touching jewelry, or working in welding, or working with any type of metals, mechanics, or what have you, they are getting lead exposure. And if you get the lead or the dust and it's on your skin, or you're inhaling it, that is going into your system. The lead is a very, very effective transport system for metals and toxins. So, it's one of those things, just be aware of it. Maybe use gloves when you're handling the old porcelain and dishes. And Holly, so let's see. I did a lot of IV chelation and EDTA push. Now I'm sicker than I was. The reason for that is because when you have metal toxicity, you don't go in and drop a nuclear bomb on it. It's not that simple. It's not that simple where, I have metals, let's go in and rip them out. That isn't how the body works. And so there's many, many other things to consider before. And IV chelation is something you do if it's if the life-threatening toxicity. Yes, do IV chelation to bring the levels down quickly. But the problem is that many people, they have to mineralize their body first before they're ready for detoxification. They have to get proper nutrition. They have to open up the detox pathways. We have to make sure that you're pooping. We also, some people need certain nutrients on board to be able to process all these metals. These metals don't just automatically come out. They have to have glutathione. They have to have vitamin C. They have to have N-acetylcysteine. That we have to have sulfur on board, so that all the different, points where metals are broken down and then transported out of the body, all that has to be working properly, and that all takes nutrients. It also requires proper hydration, which a lot of people don't get correct either. It's not as simple as just drinking water. So I've addressed a lot of these kind of basic foundational steps on MyersDetox.com. Explore these in the Myers Detox podcast. So you want to be making sure all your little ducks in a row, doing like a pre-tox, hydration, grounding, EMF protection, minerals, nutrients, open up detox pathways. Then it's time for dropping the nuclear bomb, but not before then. So that's why you're not well. This is too much for your body. And it might be nice because you brought some of your levels down, but your body could not handle that much toxin coming out at one time. So it just starts floating around your body, causing all these problems. It's been dislodged from the safe storage sites it was in, but now it's been mobilized and is causing problems and can't find an exit for all of the above reasons I just talked about. So it's that's not all. It's not the first step in the detox process. It's just going in and pulling them out. The body isn't going to let a lot of metals just come out of the body. It's using them for various things. People typically aren't going to get to toxins that are stored in their bones until they've gotten rid of toxins in the soft tissues. So there's lots of things to consider. So let's see. So next question here, Janelle. So wow, great information. Yeah. Thank you so much. Happy to be here educating you guys. So Deborah, so what problems does lead cause during menopause? So very good question. So what happens is lead is in your bones. When women start hit menopause, they have less estrogen. They produce less estrogen just naturally, but estrogen has a bone protective effect. And when our estrogen levels come down, we have higher bone cell turnover. And so we start having bone loss as a result of that and, reduced bone density. And because of that faster bone cell turnover, we have more lead that starts coming out of our bones into our system and causing fatigue and causing hormonal issues, causing cataracts, and causing a lot of symptoms that people have. This huge list I just went over earlier. And that is not necessarily due to menopause or getting older or whatnot. It's because of lead that's stored in the bones that's now coming out, being released into the system. So that's something that to be acutely aware of, that, you're not screwed up, you're not going crazy. It's not normal to have really, really rough menopause transition. A lot of that can be due to lead and other metals interfering in your hormones. So let's see. Next question is here. Rebecca Miller. So can't do cilantro. Does the silica supplement, the activated silica you sell, pull lead? No, so that does not get lead. The activated silica gets trivalent metals, which are arsenic, aluminum, tin, thallium, and cesium. Also gets bismuth and antimony also, and cesium, but does not get lead. So lead is a divalent metal, so things like DMSA, EDTA, cilantro, even lipoic acid. I like Life Extension super lipoic acid, also great for lead as well. But those are things that I mentioned earlier that will get lead. Silica isn't one of them. But there's different types of silicas. There is one silica, different chemical formulations of silica. One is intestinal metal detox by Quicksilver. That is a form of silica that prevents lead reabsorption from the gut. So that will get lead. Janelle, so my hair analysis showed nothing. I ended up having an IV chelation test, 6 hours urine collection, and then found that you had lead, barium, cadmium, and aluminum, and 3 others that were sky high. I could not use hair for my head as I color it. But per the natural path, should have forgone the dye job. So in my opinion, you can do hair mineral analysis even if you color your hair. I just don't find that it affects the results at all. But many times people do a hair test and they don't have any metals coming out. That can happen for a number of different reasons. Some people genetically don't deposit metals into the hair shaft. And that's not very common, but it does happen. And that's why I usually always recommend doing a urine metals analysis as well, not only for that reason, but because we see different metals in the hair, different metals in the urine, and different metals in the stool. So there's no perfect single amazing metals test out there. I like to start with a hair test because it's a very inexpensive, very accurate screening tool, but it's not going to tell us all the metals that you have in your body. So that's great that you did that urine test and found that you had a lot of other metals. So next question here. So I wish I'd have known about you before I did the hair analysis test from my doctor. They said no hair from my head as I color my hair. Use the other hair, and it showed nothing. So I'm assuming maybe pubic hair. Did the IV chelation test, and thanks for all your dedication to helping those of us sojourners getting healthy. Yeah. So there's just a lot of, misconceptions and distinctions that people need to make, that which is, why I do what I do. Because I was in your shoes. I was that person, looking for answers to my health, trying to figure out like what the heck is wrong with me. Why am I spending like my full-time job is getting healthy. I spend all day long cooking and foraging for food, and then cooking it and taking supplements and reading about health and sleeping and exercising, do everything. And why don't I feel good? And so I've been that person before, searching for answers. And so I'm answering all the questions that I had as someone trying to figure out what was going on with me. So next question here, Katie. So is it okay to take coriander seed oil and do coffee enemas, or is an additional binder needed? So anytime you're doing any type of detox at all, coffee enemas, infrared saunas, detox supplements, you need to be taking a binder, because binders serve to mop up whatever a chelator like cilantro is doing to pull metals out of tissue storage sites. And the binder kind of sweeps all that up, sponges it up, and you excrete it. So a coriander seed oil is a chelator. It's going into tissues and grabbing stuff out. A binder doesn't do that. A binder just kind of comes in like a fiber and kind of just sweeps it all up, but it's not getting into the cells. It's not getting in to tissue storage sites and pulling them out like a chelator does. And so if you're doing coffee enemas, really good idea to take a binder so that any toxins that are released into your gut from doing the coffee enema can more effectively be removed and just swept out of the colon, because people can get auto intoxication where they have toxins that get into the colon and then get reabsorbed. So really, really important to take a binder. So you kind of just, all the efforts that you're going to, all the lengths and time and expense that you're going to, binders make all of that more effective. And so my CitraCleanse is a great binder. I love this stuff. I take it every single morning. I take more if I'm doing a sauna or a coffee enema that day, but it stays in your body about 12 hours after you take it. So ideally you can take it about twice a day, 12 hours apart. So you always have some in your system. And you guys can see my sauna here. I put my infrared sauna in my office. And this is my SaunaFix sauna. And kind of moved it in here so I can just, finish this Facebook Live. I can just roll over there and do my sauna. So next question here. So Mary, how many times a day do we take CitraCleanse? So yeah, I just answered that question. I just saw that and answered it before I even read it. So Katie, and since everyone has some lead, then what's an okay health level of lead to look for on tests? So every test has a reference range where if you're over that reference range, then you're considered more toxic than all the other people taking that test. So, and it depends on what tests you're doing and what lab you're doing. So I can't give you any definitive answer on that, but I can tell you statistically, everyone has lead, and lead has no physiological purpose in your body. It is causing problems, namely fatigue, hormonal disruption, and brain fog and memory issues. Those are kind of the main symptoms it causes. So it's not doing you any favors, but It doesn't show up on hair tests usually. Almost always it shows up in urine. Almost always it shows up in a stool metals test. But even if it doesn't show up, it doesn't mean it's not there. It just doesn't happen to be showing up on that test for various reasons that I explained earlier. Let's see. So next question here. So Janelle. So my doctor has me on a different citrus pectin. Could I take it once a day and your CitraCleanse once a day? Yes, that's perfectly capable, perfectly fine for doing that. And let's see. So Courtney, I have a large rainwater one, but we'll look out for it. So Laura, can the team post a link for the shower head, please? I'm so sorry, I don't have those links yet. The shower head isn't out yet. It's going to be out very, very soon. They were supposed to be out in September, but the company just is a little bit behind. So as soon as they're out, if you follow my newsletter, if you go on myersdetox.com and sign up for any of the free guides or sign up for the newsletter on my site, you will get an email notification when those shower heads are out. I'll be doing an article about them. I'll be doing a podcast about them. So just stay tuned to the newsletter for that. So everyone, I do have to go right now. Thanks so much for joining me. I got to get my daughter to karate right now. So thanks for joining me on this Facebook Live. We do these every Tuesday at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern. If you miss any part of this, it's going to start over on Facebook. Go on facebook.com/MyersDetox. The video will live there forever. And we'll also post it immediately on my YouTube channel at youtube.com/Wendy Myers. So thanks for tuning in, and I'll talk to you guys next week.